The goal for me after this presentation is to help you get out of the mobile acquisition hamster wheel. And here's some slides that you've probably seen before. This is Gartner research, which essentially looks at the overall effectiveness of communication channels in mobile. And essentially it's highlighting that mobile is the top two most effective channel of communication. So from the very beginning through the sales funnel or the sales cycle, which essentially is discussing finding out who the company is and what services they're offering, all the way down to interest, thinking about buying your service or your product, and then of course the conversion, purchasing the product or service, and finally referring you to their friends and family. So now the bad news. Can you think of your application, and do you already happen to know your 90-day retention? For us, we looked at our overall client data, and this is what we found. The x-axis is the number of days, the y-axis is the retention rate, and what we're seeing is that retention just isn't fantastic. In fact, we do a lot better overall. Within the first day, about 80% of your users aren't coming back to the application, and when you look at it at the high level, 90-day retention, it's just over 2% of your users who are coming back to your application. And how Emily mentioned for Skyscanner, that may be a good thing. For example, you don't need to get your users back within the first day or within the first week, even the first month. But typically, you want them coming back at least within the first 90 days. So that's clearly going to impact your ability to grow. There is something you can do about this, and that's essentially running effective activation campaigns to improve your overall retention. So imagine that we're part of this one application. I'm just going to make something up. The app is going to be called FitFun, and we track health, and we also have a specific feature that allows you to understand your overall blood pressure. So we could run an onboarding campaign specifically based on that feature that you haven't used. If you've already gone into the application and you understand your overall flow, and users who've already been activated, you need to message them. But everyone else who hasn't used that, you definitely should make sure that you're creating a campaign around that. And for our clients, we've seen that the people who actually run these effective activation campaigns can actually reduce their overall one-time visitors by about 21%, which then, of course, increases the highly engaged users overall by about 22%. And best of all, this is your bread and butter, increasing the number of users who are purchasing within the first 30 days by about 5x. So let's take a look at costs. Liftoff Mobile and Leanplum ran a study to understand what was the overall cost per install. And on average, we saw that this was about $2.89, almost $3. And again, looking at the research, we saw that most of these users were actually churning within the first 90 days, and that's a churn rate of about 98%. So tons of people were just saying, buy to your app. Which typically when I'm working with my clients, I'm looking at everything by thousands. So if you do a little bit of multiplication, that means that for 1,000 installs you've gotten in, you essentially have 20 active users at the end of 90 days. So doing the math again, if you've spent about $2,890 to get 1,000 users, that's about $145 per active user at the end of 90 days. That's a huge problem, but there is something you can do about this. So let's take a look at some of our own customers and what they've done. So for one of our customers, what they did is they identified the right milestones to prove value earlier. This is, again, an echo of what we just discussed here. And how many of you guys know IMVO? Cool. So for anybody who doesn't know IMVO, they are an avatar-based social community. You can go in, you can create your avatar, and you can buy things for your avatar just as you would within your within the real life. So you can buy clothes, accessories, anything you want to. And what they're really focused on was making sure that they're figuring out those hooks, the ways that they're getting people to actually stay in the application and make more purchases. What they really wanted to do was drive long-term retention and increase overall revenue. So this is what they did. They had multiple different campaigns, all targeted to specific users. And for a set of users, they created an A/B test. Some of them received 2,000 credits out the door. And for a few other users, they gave them 10,000 credits. Again, it's free for them, credits mean nothing to them, except for the user who's actually paying for them. And for users who then got 10,000 credits, they actually saw a huge increase, 157%, of overall retention, and they were able to increase their ARPU by 2, which is fantastic. So main takeaway there, make sure that you're tracking a wide range of different events, identifying your activation events specifically, and monitor how those change over time, especially when it comes to campaigns and how it's actually affecting your overall KPIs. Next tip, create a stronger path to conversion. So Text Plus is a service in the US and Canada, very, very similar to WhatsApp. So essentially what they do is they allow you to text and call your friends and family for free. And they had 2 main milestones, and this is all part of the onboarding process. They understood that if they can get somebody to sign up and more specifically provide their phone number, they're almost got somebody who is very active. The next thing they need to do is actually start sending out those text messages, those calls, and then they have a very active user. So they essentially built a campaign directly around that. Anyone who had not yet provided their phone number and then once they provided their phone number, had not yet started their texting, their calling, they then started messaging those users through targeted campaigns. And what they saw was a 2x increase in 90-day retention. And overall, they were able to capture about 30% more phone numbers during the lifespan of this campaign. Main takeaway, make sure that you're creating a multi-touch activation campaign to increase your retention. Another strategy here is to continually test and refine your approach. Again, in the panel, everyone has one specific North Star metric that they're interested or they're at least trying out. And really make sure that you are guiding your apps towards this. So here are a few things you could do. You can create many different types of campaigns and campaign flows, and you want to make sure that you're iterating. Text Plus, IMView, they didn't just land on this first campaign, they iterated on those campaigns to understand what works and what doesn't work for their specific users. You also want to make sure that you're really focusing on A/B testing. A/B test the channel, the copy, the UX, UI. And most importantly, make sure that you're identifying how users are interacting and dropping off from your onboarding campaigns. So also think about using optimization and experimentation. For example, you can experiment here. There's 2 different push notifications for a abandonment cart campaign. One is very simple, you've left 2 items, but the other one just includes a name. You can see if this actually increases the overall retention or bring people back into the app, and more specifically, get them to actually make that purchase that they left in their bag. Or you could also focus on optimization. For example, in your onboarding flow, you could consider a push notification as opposed to an in-app message, and then create the overall flow for your users and understand what is actually going to lead to us actually converting that user and creating better retention. Also, if you're not working with your product team and testing the UX, UI, I would definitely recommend you do so. You can test things like adding in a Facebook login, or maybe even changing the image of the splash page as somebody's coming in. For example, everyone who's logging in from London, maybe they want to see Big Ben, although right now it's being covered. So you might want to even do that as well. But you can test so many different things, buttons, colors, anything you can think of, you can test it in the app and then see how that's actually driving towards conversion, retention, overall revenue. Main takeaway there, make sure that you're testing everything. Monitor all impacts to understand the journeys and hone in the messages, experiences, and the steps that drive towards users converting. So I don't have a ton of time, but I just want to show you guys a snapshot of some of the brands that trust us to help with their business growth. For example, with Papa John's in the US, they're looking to us to help them drive more pizza sales. In Asia, Grab is making sure that we're helping their passengers go from point A to point B. And even Dice here in London, they're looking to make sure that they are targeting the right user based on music recommendations to different shows here in London, across the UK, and they're now expanding into the US. So I know I went through everything super quickly, so if you have any questions for me, I'll be out in the back at our booth. We also have my colleagues here who are happy to answer your questions. But if you don't find me, you can message me at my first name at leanplum.com. Thank you.